I speak to you at the beginning of this day, when many voices will compete for your attention, and many paths will invite your steps. I see the shortcuts that promise ease, and the clever words that dismiss truth as outdated. I know how tempting it is to follow what sounds smart, efficient, and popular. But hear me before you listen to anything else. Wisdom does not begin with pride, and understanding is not found in denial of me. The world may call foolishness freedom, and call wisdom weakness. But I remain the source of truth that does not fail. Choose wisely today. Choose what leads to life, clarity, and peace. Walk with me, and let your steps be guided by wisdom that endures. When you choose my wisdom, you choose a path that does not always look impressive at first glance. It is not loud, not boastful, and not obsessed with proving itself. My wisdom does not rush to be admired. It seeks to be faithful. Foolishness, on the other hand, loves attention. It speaks confidently even when it lacks understanding. It dismisses accountability and calls it independence. I see how often foolishness disguises itself as intelligence, convincing many that they are free simply because they refuse to acknowledge me. I know how persuasive foolishness can sound. It tells you that you are your own authority, that you answer only to yourself. That truth is whatever you decide it to be. At first, this feels empowering. It feels like control, but control without wisdom becomes chaos. Independence without truth becomes isolation. I see where these paths lead long before you do. That is why I speak now, not to restrict you, but to protect you. My wisdom begins with humility. It recognizes limits. It understands that life is larger than individual desire. Foolishness begins with denial. It says there is no need for me, no need for guidance beyond human reasoning. This denial does not make a person free, it makes them vulnerable. When you remove me from your thinking, you remove the foundation that keeps understanding aligned with reality. You may see people around you prosper while ignoring me. You may see confidence rewarded and arrogance applauded. Do not let appearances confuse you. Short-term success does not equal long-term stability. Foolishness can build quickly, but it collapses suddenly. My wisdom builds slowly, but it endures. I know how often you are pressured to compromise truth to appear intelligent, modern, or acceptable. You are told that faith is nard and trust in me is outdated. But wisdom is not measured by trends. Wisdom is measured by outcomes. Look carefully at what foolishness produces: confusion, conflict, division, emptiness. These are not signs of freedom. They are warnings. When you choose my wisdom, you choose clarity in a confused world. You choose restraint when impulse would harm you. You choose patience when haste would lead you astray. My wisdom teaches you to see beyond the moment. It helps you recognize consequences before they arrive. Foolishness only sees what it wants now. I see how pride resists wisdom. Pride says it already knows enough. Pride refuses correction. Pride avoids humility. Foolishness grows strongest where pride is fed. Wisdom grows where humility is welcomed. When you acknowledge me, you open yourself to instruction that refines rather than diminishes you. My wisdom does not remove your ability to think. It sharpens it. It does not silence your questions, it grounds them. You are not asked to abandon reason, but to align it with truth. Reason disconnected from me becomes distorted. It justifies what should be questioned and dismisses what should be honored. You may feel tension choosing my wisdom in a world that celebrates foolishness. You may feel misunderstood, overlooked, or even mocked. But wisdom does not seek approval. It seeks alignment. You do not need to convince everyone. You need to remain faithful. I know how easily foolishness enters through small compromises. You tell yourself it is harmless to ignore me in certain decisions. But separation grows gradually. What begins as convenience becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. My wisdom calls you back before distance becomes damage. When you choose my wisdom, you choose life. Not merely existence, but life marked by meaning, integrity, and peace. Foolishness promises pleasure, but cannot sustain joy. It offers excitement without fulfillment. My wisdom offers depth that does not fade when circumstances change. I see how foolishness resists accountability. It blames others, systems, or circumstances. Wisdom accepts responsibility. It learns. It grows. It repents when necessary. This willingness to be corrected is strength, not weakness. You may think wisdom limits your freedom. In truth, wisdom protects it. Boundaries guided by truth keep you from harm you cannot yet see. Foolishness removes boundaries and calls it courage, then leaves you exposed. My wisdom teaches you how to speak, when to remain silent, and how to listen. Foolishness speaks constantly, often without understanding. Wisdom values discernment over volume. It does not need to dominate to be effective. I know how tempting it is to rely solely on human understanding. Human understanding has value, but it is incomplete. When it excludes me, it becomes self-referential. It circles endlessly without resolution. My wisdom gives perspective that lifts you beyond narrow thinking. Choosing my wisdom will not make life effortless. It will make life anchored. Storms will still come, but you will not be swept away. Foolishness collapses under pressure because it has no foundation. My wisdom stands because it is rooted in me. I see how foolishness distorts values. It calls good evil and evil good. It mocks what is sacred and glorifies what is destructive. This confusion does not happen suddenly. It grows when truth is ignored. My wisdom restores clarity. When you choose me, you choose to see clearly. You recognize deception more easily. You are less manipulated by fear or flattery. Wisdom guards your heart and mind. I know how foolishness promises control. It tells you that acknowledging me will make you dependent. In reality, dependence on me frees you from false control. You no longer have to carry what you were never meant to carry alone. My wisdom also shapes how you treat others. It teaches compassion without compromise, truth spoken with love, correction offered with humility. Foolishness either avoids truth or uses it to harm. Wisdom builds. You may feel pressure to silence your faith to avoid conflict, but silence does not bring peace when truth is abandoned. Wisdom teaches you how to remain faithful without becoming harsh. I see how choosing my wisdom strengthens your inner life. Anxiety lessens, decisions become clearer, regret decreases. You live with intention rather than reaction. Foolishness chases novelty. Wisdom values consistency. Foolishness changes with opinion. Wisdom remains steady. I know how foolishness flatters the ego. Wisdom humbles the heart. Humility is not humiliation. It is alignment with truth. Choosing my wisdom aligns your mind with reality, rather than illusion. You see things as they are, not as pride wishes them to be. I see how wisdom protects future generations. The choices you make today shape what comes after you. Foolishness thinks only of now. Wisdom considers what will last. My wisdom invites you to walk carefully, thoughtfully, faithfully. It does not rush you. It guides you. You may not always feel wise. Wisdom is not a feeling. It is a choice repeated daily. Choose me today. Choose truth over convenience. Choose humility over pride. Choose wisdom that leads to life. As you begin this day, let your steps be guided not by what sounds clever, but by what is true, not by what is popular, but by what is right, not by what denies me, but by what draws you closer, allowing my wisdom to shape your thoughts, direct your choices, guard your heart, and lead you steadily forward into a life marked by clarity, peace, and understanding that will not fail you as you walk through this world anchored in truth and aligned with me. When a heart chooses to deny me, it does not become neutral, it becomes distorted. Truth does not disappear when it is rejected, it is replaced. And what replaces it reshapes the way you see, think, decide, and desire. I see this distortion forming long before it becomes visible in behavior. It begins quietly, in assumptions that go unchallenged, in pride that resists humility, in reasoning that no longer asks whether something is right, only whether it is useful or convenient. Rejecting me is not merely an intellectual position. It is a relational rupture that affects understanding itself. When you remove me from your thinking, you remove the reference point that keeps truth aligned with reality. What remains is reasoning that circles itself, justifying what it wants and dismissing what it fears. This is how foolishness grows confident. It does not feel lost, it feels certain, and that false certainty is dangerous. I know how subtle this distortion can be. It does not always announce itself with rebellion. Often it appears as sophistication, independence, or progress. It tells you that you no longer need guidance beyond your own insight, that accountability limits freedom, that humility is weakness. But wisdom does not begin with self-sufficiency. Wisdom begins with reverence. When reverence is removed, discernment erodes. You may notice how easily truth becomes negotiable when I am excluded. What was once clear becomes flexible. What was once wrong becomes acceptable if it benefits you. What was once sacred becomes inconvenient. This is not growth, it is corrosion. It happens slowly, through repeated compromises that seem small until they reshape your values entirely. I see how rejecting me distorts compassion. Without truth, compassion becomes permissive. It excuses harm in the name of kindness. It avoids correction to preserve comfort. True compassion protects what is good even when it is uncomfortable. Foolish compassion avoids discomfort, even when harm is done. Rejecting me also distorts justice. Justice without truth becomes selective. It punishes what threatens personal interest and ignores what does not. It becomes loud about certain wrongs and silent about others. This inconsistency is not wisdom. It is bias disguised as morality. I know how appealing it feels to believe you can define truth for yourself. Autonomy feels powerful, but truth defined by preference collapses under pressure. When circumstances change, self-made truth must change with them. This instability breeds anxiety, even when it is masked by confidence. When I am removed from understanding, pride takes my place. Pride becomes the final authority. Pride resists correction, dismisses counsel, and avoids responsibility. It calls itself strong, but it is fragile. The slightest challenge threatens it. This is why foolishness reacts defensively. It cannot endure scrutiny. You may see intelligence celebrated even when it denies me. Intelligence has value, but it is not the same as wisdom. Intelligence can analyze, wisdom discerns. Intelligence can explain, wisdom aligns. Intelligence, without me, often becomes clever at justifying what should be questioned. I see how rejecting me distorts relationships. Without truth as a guide, relationships become transactional. People are valued for usefulness rather than worth. Loyalty becomes conditional. Love becomes performance-based. This is not freedom. It is insecurity wearing confidence. Rejecting me also distorts self-understanding. You begin to define yourself by achievement, image, or control. When these falter, identity fractures. My presence anchors identity beyond success or failure. Without me, identity becomes unstable, constantly reshaped by approval or criticism. I know how foolishness mocks accountability. It resists confession, avoids repentance, and reframes guilt as oppression. But accountability is not oppression. It is protection. It keeps the heart soft and the conscience clear. When accountability is rejected, the heart hardens without realizing it. You may notice how foolishness grows louder as it becomes more hollow. Noise compensates for lack of depth. Confidence compensates for lack of peace. Pride compensates for lack of security. Wisdom does not need these compensations. It rests. Rejecting me also distorts how you interpret success. Success becomes proof of rightness, even when achieved through harm. But outcomes do not justify means. Foolishness celebrates results without examining cost. Wisdom considers what is lost as carefully as what is gained. I see how rejecting me affects language. Words lose meaning. Promises become tools. Truth becomes narrative. When language is distorted, trust collapses. Communication becomes manipulation. Wisdom restores integrity to speech. You may feel that rejecting me gives you control. In reality, it gives you burden. You become responsible for defining everything: meaning, morality, purpose. This weight is heavy. Many carry it unknowingly and wonder why they are exhausted. I know how foolishness resists stillness. Stillness invites reflection. Reflection invites humility. Humility threatens pride. Without me, the heart avoids stillness because stillness exposes emptiness. Wisdom welcomes stillness because it leads to clarity. Rejecting me also distorts time. Immediate gratification outweighs long-term consequence. Urgency replaces patience. Wisdom sees beyond now. Foolishness lives only for the moment and is surprised by consequences later. I see how foolishness distorts courage. It calls recklessness bravery and restraint fear. True courage is guided by truth. Foolish courage rushes forward without discernment and calls damage growth. You may think rejecting me frees you from moral tension. In truth, it creates constant inner conflict. Conscience does not disappear when denied. It becomes quieter, then heavier. Wisdom aligns conscience with truth, bringing peace. I know how foolishness treats correction as attack. Correction feels threatening when pride rules. Wisdom receives correction as refinement. This difference determines growth or decay. Rejecting me also distorts hope. Hope becomes optimism without foundation. It depends on circumstances. When circumstances fail, hope collapses. Hope rooted in me endures because it is anchored beyond circumstance. I see how foolishness distorts leadership. Authority becomes self-serving. Power lacks responsibility. Influence lacks care. Wisdom understands leadership as stewardship, not entitlement. You may notice how rejecting me narrows perspective. The world becomes smaller. Self becomes center. Wisdom expands perspective, connecting choices to impact beyond self. I know how foolishness avoids responsibility by blaming systems, history, or others. Wisdom accepts responsibility without despair. It learns and adjusts. Rejecting me also distorts peace. Peace becomes avoidance of conflict rather than alignment with truth. But avoiding truth creates deeper unrest. Wisdom brings peace through integrity, not avoidance. I see how foolishness celebrates cleverness over character. But cleverness fades. Character endures. Wisdom forms character patiently. You may think rejecting me protects you from disappointment. In reality, it removes the only foundation that can sustain you through disappointment. Wisdom does not promise ease. It promises grounding. Rejecting me distorts discernment. You begin to call harmful things necessary and good things restrictive. This reversal is not progress. It is confusion. I know how foolishness resists surrender. Surrender feels like loss of control, but surrender to me restores proper order. You release what was never yours to manage. Rejecting me also distorts joy. Joy becomes stimulation. When stimulation fades, emptiness remains. Wisdom cultivates joy that remains even in quiet. I see how foolishness avoids questions that challenge it. Wisdom welcomes questions because truth withstands examination. You may feel that rejecting me makes you strong. Strength without truth is brittle. It breaks under weight it cannot carry. Rejecting me distorts community. People gather around shared interests rather than shared values. When interests change, community fractures. Wisdom builds community on truth and commitment. I know how foolishness redefines freedom as absence of restraint. True freedom is alignment with what is good. Without alignment, freedom becomes chaos. Rejecting me distorts meaning. Meaning becomes self-assigned and temporary. Wisdom roots meaning in what endures. I see how foolishness fears humility. Humility exposes need. But need is not weakness, it is reality. Wisdom embraces reality. You may think rejecting me removes limits. Limits protect life. Without them, destruction follows. Rejecting me distorts love. Love becomes indulgence or control. Wisdom loves with truth and sacrifice. I know how foolishness avoids repentance. Repentance threatens pride, but repentance heals. Wisdom values healing over image. Rejecting me distorts judgment. Right and wrong blur. Wisdom clarifies. I see how foolishness confuses confidence with certainty. Wisdom is confident without being rigid. Rejecting me distorts listening. You hear only what affirms you. Wisdom listens fully. I know how foolishness reacts. Wisdom responds. Rejecting me distorts peace into numbness. Wisdom cultivates peace through wholeness. I see how foolishness celebrates self-expression without self-examination. Wisdom examines before expressing. Rejecting me distorts growth. Growth becomes accumulation rather than transformation. Wisdom transforms. You may feel rejecting me simplifies life. It complicates it silently. Rejecting me distorts truth until it bends around desire. Wisdom bends desire toward truth. I see how foolishness denies consequences until they arrive. Wisdom anticipates them. Rejecting me distorts hope into denial. Wisdom hopes honestly. I know how foolishness avoids reverence. Reverence restores order. Rejecting me distorts the heart slowly, quietly, convincingly, until what once felt wrong feels normal, and what once felt right feels restrictive. And without noticing the shift, the heart becomes misaligned with reality itself, drifting further from clarity, peace, and life as pride replaces humility, confusion replaces discernment, and truth is exchanged for comfort in ways that feel empowering at first, but lead steadily toward emptiness, instability, and loss of direction that only wisdom rooted in me can heal and restore. When you choose me, you do not lose yourself. You come into alignment with truth that restores clarity, order, and peace within you. Choosing me is not an escape from thinking. It is the healing of it. When your mind aligns with me, confusion loosens its grip, anxiety quiets, and discernment sharpens. Truth does not burden the mind. It frees it from distortion. I know how noisy the world feels when every opinion claims authority, and every voice demands agreement. Your mind becomes crowded with contradictions. You carry thoughts that compete with one another, pulling you in different directions. This mental division drains you. Choosing me reunites what has been fragmented. When truth becomes your center, your thoughts no longer scatter endlessly. They gather around what is real. Alignment begins when you stop asking only what works and begin asking what is true. Truth has weight. It grounds you. When you choose me, you choose a fixed reference point that keeps your thinking anchored, even when circumstances shift. Without this anchor, the mind drifts, constantly adjusting to avoid discomfort. Alignment restores stability. I see how easily the mind becomes restless when it tries to carry ultimate authority alone. You analyze, compare, evaluate, and justify endlessly. You feel pressure to get everything right because everything depends on you. Choosing me releases that pressure. You no longer have to be your own final authority. Truth steadies you where self-rule exhausts you. When your mind aligns with me, peace follows naturally. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. It is the absence of inner conflict. Much of your unrest comes not from circumstances, but from divided thinking, knowing what is right but resisting it, sensing truth but avoiding it. Alignment resolves this tension. When your thoughts agree with truth, peace settles. I know how often peace is misunderstood as comfort. Comfort avoids challenge. Peace endures through it. Choosing me does not remove responsibility. It orders it. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer pulled by competing loyalties. Alignment simplifies what confusion complicated. When you align your mind with me, discernment sharpens. You begin to recognize what feeds fear and what feeds life. You see through manipulation more easily. Lies lose their power when truth is present. Discernment is not suspicion. It is clarity that does not panic. I see how alignment affects your inner dialogue. The voice of accusation grows quieter. You stop interpreting every failure as proof of worthlessness. You learn to correct yourself without condemning yourself. Truth speaks firmly but gently. Peace grows where shame once ruled. Choosing me also aligns your desires. Desires are not erased. They are refined. Misaligned desire pulls you toward what cannot satisfy. Aligned desire draws you toward what sustains life. When desire aligns with truth, contentment grows even before circumstances change. I know how easily the mind chases approval. Approval becomes a measure of worth. When approval fades, peace collapses. Alignment with me stabilizes your identity. You no longer need constant affirmation to feel secure. Security rooted in truth does not fluctuate with opinion. Peace also grows as alignment frees you from comparison. Comparison thrives where identity is unstable. When you know who you are in me, others' paths no longer threaten you. You celebrate without envy. You wait without resentment. I see how alignment affects how you process information. You are no longer overwhelmed by volume. You filter wisely. Not every headline shapes your mood. Not every argument demands your energy. Truth-centered thinking conserves strength. Choosing me aligns your conscience. Conscience aligned with truth becomes a guide rather than a tormentor. It alerts you without accusing. It corrects without crushing. Peace grows when conscience and action agree. I know how misalignment creates anxiety. Anxiety often comes from resisting what you already know is right. Alignment dissolves this resistance. Obedience is not loss of freedom. It is freedom from inner friction. When your mind aligns with me, patience grows. You are no longer driven by urgency to resolve everything immediately. You trust timing. You act when it is right, not when pressure demands it. Peace accompanies patience. Alignment also affects how you speak. Words become measured rather than reactive. You listen more fully. You respond rather than react. Calm speech flows from an aligned mind. I see how alignment transforms conflict. Conflict no longer threatens your identity. You can disagree without hostility. You stand firm without aggression. Peace does not require silence. It requires truth spoken without fear. Choosing me also aligns your priorities. What once felt urgent loses dominance. What truly matters gains clarity. You invest energy where it yields life. Peace follows purposeful living. I know how misalignment fragments attention. You are pulled toward distractions that promise relief but deliver emptiness. Alignment refocuses attention. You become present. Presence brings peace. Alignment also stabilizes emotions. You still feel deeply, but emotions no longer control you. Truth anchors feeling. You grieve without despair. You rejoice without excess. Emotional balance grows where truth leads. I see how alignment restores trust in yourself. Not self-trust rooted in pride, but confidence rooted in alignment. You trust your decisions because they are guided by truth rather than impulse. Peace grows as self-doubt fades. Choosing me aligns your will. You stop fighting reality and begin cooperating with it. Resistance drains energy. Alignment restores it. Peace flows where resistance ends. I know how alignment transforms how you view mistakes. Mistakes become opportunities for growth rather than proof of failure. Peace replaces shame. Alignment also strengthens resilience. When difficulties come, you recover more quickly. You are not undone by setbacks. Truth steadies you. I see how alignment influences your relationships. You relate honestly. You set healthy boundaries. You love without manipulation. Peace spreads outward from an aligned heart. Choosing me aligns your understanding of success. Success becomes faithfulness rather than recognition. This shift removes constant striving. Peace replaces performance. I know how alignment reshapes hope. Hope becomes grounded rather than fragile. It does not collapse when outcomes delay. Peace accompanies hope that endures. Alignment also quiets fear. Fear loses power when truth stands. You act wisely without panic. Peace guards your decisions. I see how alignment restores joy. Joy returns not as excitement but as contentment. Contentment is peace expressed as satisfaction. Choosing me aligns your perspective on suffering. Suffering does not define you. It shapes you without destroying you. Peace remains even in pain. I know how alignment simplifies life. Complexity often arises from divided loyalties. Alignment removes that division. Peace follows simplicity. Alignment also renews courage. Courage grows when fear is no longer the loudest voice. Peace steadies courage. I see how alignment clarifies purpose. Purpose becomes lived rather than searched for endlessly. Peace flows from purposeful living. Choosing me aligns your future. You are no longer anxious about what comes next. You trust guidance. Peace accompanies trust. Alignment restores harmony between thought, desire, and action. When these agree, inner conflict dissolves. Peace grows as alignment deepens. You do not have to force peace. You choose truth, and peace follows. You do not have to chase wisdom. You choose me, and wisdom forms you. You do not have to silence foolishness everywhere. You align your mind with truth, and foolishness loses influence. Choosing me is choosing clarity over confusion, order over chaos, peace over unrest. And as your mind aligns with me, thought by thought, choice by choice, day by day, peace continues to settle within you, guiding your steps, calming your heart, sharpening your discernment, and anchoring your life in wisdom that does not waver, truth that does not bend, and understanding that sustains you steadily as you walk forward grounded, clear-minded, and at rest in alignment that leads to life.